This is a very special occasion for myself and the gentleman with whom I'm speaking. Um, in fact, we're going to have a conversation about one of my favorite subjects of all, the Queen of Soul, Aretha Franklin. And the occasion specifically is her birthday on the 25th of March. And it's also, in particular, because the gentleman I'm speaking with, Matthew. Hello, Matthew. Why don't
How
you
you
say
doing?
hello
How you doing?
to,
How's it going? It's good to be here. What's going on,
yes,
David?
yes. Um, the gentleman Matthew Jordan Smith has done an amazing, amazing book, which of course you can see behind him on the screen, which is a very it's a deluxe photo book, coffee table book, um, from his years of working directly with Aretha. It's very special for me because of my long time relationship with Aretha, which began when I was a teenager in 1966, directly and correctly, but was preceded by my introduction to her music in 1965. I was a fan in England as a teenager and wrote to her in Detroit as famously care of her father's church because I didn't have any address for her, and followed up with another letter. Uh, of course, back then, no internet, no nothing else, just letters. And followed
Right.
up with another letter to her manager, who I didn't realize at the time was also a husband. And I got a letter back from Aretha, which was amazing to me. Amazing that she sat down and wrote and said she was so thrilled that people knew her music in England. And we go from there through decades and decades of me doing interviews with her as a music journalist and then as an archivist, going through the vaults, finding many of her great recordings that had not been released before, and also having the privilege, I'd say, to write literally thousands and thousands of words about her in honor of her artistry and as a human being, which is where Matthew will share with all about his relationship with Aretha and how that began. And it's just really great. Again, I just can't, it's for me to talk. This is a subject about which I could talk for, as you could tell, months and years. And just because of of Aretha's place in the world as a global icon, and in my own life as someone who has music has been the through line of my life essentially since 1966. So I've said all I have to say for now before we begin the questions. But Matthew, why don't you tell everybody about how you came to be working with Aretha and how this book therefore emerged.
Came to be. I wish I was working with her as long as you were, but I wasn't blessed the way you were to know her that long. I met her in 2004, and we started working together, and it was wonderful. I met her actually through her longtime publicist, Gwendolyn Quinn. She told Aretha about me, showed her my work. I was doing a lot of covers at the time for Essence magazine. This is like
Mm,
in the 90s. I shot a lot of covers, and early
really?
2000s as well. And then I did a book, my first book in 2001 on 50 African American celebrities, Sam Jackson, Vanessa Williams. Vanessa wrote the introduction to the book. Anyway, that book got a lot of press. People started seeing it.
Yes.
And Aretha, I guess, heard about it. So my work through Gwendolyn, and they called me. I did the first shoot with her, and that's really how I met her. But
Yes.
even going back before I physically met her in
Mhm.
person, when I first got the call about the shoot, I, of course, knew Aretha's work, and everybody does, but I wanted
Yeah.
to find out more about her. So I did some research and digging and digging and digging and found out that she loved yellow roses. So
Mm.
before that first shoot, I sent her a dozen yellow roses and a
Uh-huh.
little note saying, "Here's to a great shoot." So when I found she loved yellow roses, I'm like, okay, that's cool. I like that. But what I didn't expect was to get a call before the shoot from her. She called me like 2 days before the shoot and introduced herself, said that no photographer had ever given her yellow roses before.
Uh,
And that was the beginning of our relationship.
were you expecting, you weren't expecting the phone call, right? You were not
Not at
expecting,
all.
no.
Not at all. It was
So,
out the
so,
blue.
right. So when she called, um, did you really think it was her?
When the call came, it was a private number. This is like
Yeah.
2004. So it said private caller.
Uh-huh.
And I'm like, who is this calling me from a private number? So when I answered the phone, and then she says, Jordan, she called me Jordan right away, which is my
Really?
middle name. She said, Jordan, this is Aretha Franklin. And I'm like, and I heard the voice. I'm like, that is Aretha Franklin. That was a
Oh,
shock, number one. That's my
uh-huh.
first contact with her, was her
Mhm.
calling me before the shoot and telling
Yeah.
me that, you know, not a manager, an agent, is her calling. And
Yeah.
people don't do that. So it was a shock for me.
Yes. Yes. Well, did you find out why she called you Jordan?
I never found out the real reason. And we've been talking about that, post and trying to figure out why. And uh, she had a family member named Jordan also that she loved.
Oh, okay.
So
Hmm.
that could be the reason. Who knows? But
Yes.
I never found out why. But
But you responded anyway.
yeah, I mean, it's my father's first name also. So
Really?
yeah,
Really?
my
Wow.
father's first name was
Yes.
Jordan, is Jordan.
Yes.
So
Yes.
I loved it.
Hmm. So tell me, so here you go, you have the call with her. You already know you're going to do a photo shoot with her, but now the first in-person face-to-face meeting,
Oh,
then you recreate it for us.
yes, yes. The first in-person, meeting was in Detroit. I was living in New York City at the time. But that
Mhm.
first meeting, get to the studio and
Yes.
she's, taking care of the catering. The first shoot, she did all the catering. It's all soul food from somebody locally there in Detroit. We had a great shoot, but I'm
Mm.
getting to know her. I didn't know her at all. Like, it's the Queen
All
of
right.
Soul. I'm nervous, like, of course, it's like, this big personality. And she's, I guess trying to figure me out, trying to figure her out as well. We're
Mhm.
shooting. And there's one image where she sat down on this chaise lounge. She's looking so cool and calm. I just love the image of seeing her through my camera. I'm like,
Mhm.
wow, this
Mhm.
is perfect. But she has her purse on the chaise lounge right in front of her. So I whispered to my assistant, his name is Greg. I'm like, yo, Greg, just go over there and take that purse off the sofa. It's messing up my picture.
Go
My
ahead.
assistant goes over and puts his hand out to grab her purse,
Uh-huh.
and she like grabs his hand and says, boy, don't ever touch my purse. It shocked everybody. It shocked me. It shocked him.
Well, Matthew, you know that you know the story of Aretha and the purse on stage, right?
Yes, I do.
So
Very well.
that
I
doesn't
know
surprise
now.
me. Oh yes, oh yes. And it was funny, you just reminded me of because that wasn't always true from the beginnings of her career. It became standard practice later in her performances. And I remember the first time she came to LA after having not been there for many, many, many years, of course, because she stopped
Yeah.
flying in 1983, I believe. And so she took the Queen of Soul bus all the way from
Wow.
Detroit, as she used to call it, to
Yeah.
LA. Stopped along the way, of course, and did for this amazing concert at the Greek Theater. And I'd seen her in concert prior to that in different places, but the way you always knew that Aretha was finishing the concert and that there likely wasn't going to be an encore was one of her trusted entourage would come out onto the stage because the purse was was under the piano, next to the piano, and this is before the end of the show, just before the end of the show, and take the purse off stage, and then Aretha would complete the song, and usually come back, to appreciate the audience in her own way, and
Yeah.
thanking everybody, and that was the end of the show. And of
Yeah.
course, what people found out, well, of course, the purse wasn't just a purse.
No.
like a rose is not just a rose. It's still a rose, and it is that it had the money from the performance in it, and
Yeah.
and it became a thing. People say, well, if you see the purse go, Aretha's about to end the show. As you said it, I can see what it looked like.
Oh yeah. Oh
Now,
yeah.
once that
And
happened, everything was, to quote the name of your book, cool.
that picture of her with that purse, it's in there. And after that, I knew about the purse and how important it was. And
Yeah.
I've got many pictures of her, with the
Yes.
purse or purses throughout the years.
Yes.
And I
Well,
respected that purse.
I just mentioned that the book is called Aretha Cool, which leads me to
Yes.
ask you, why is it called Cool?
Well, there's two reasons. Everybody knows her, of course, as being the queen of soul. But to me, from that very first shoot, she was the queen of cool.
Cool.
She
Okay.
was. She was just cool, calm, and collected all the time.
Mm,
But we talked, I guess, starting maybe the second year or so, we started talking on the phone.
mm,
And when we talk on the phone, like the average person says, yeah, yeah, she would say, cool, cool. And I'm like, oh, that's what I've got to call it, Aretha Cool. Because when I see cool, I hear her voice, and
yes.
it's Riri.
Yeah, it is. It is. I assume you were somewhat nervous when you came face to face to actually do the
Oh
first photo shoot.
yeah. Oh yes. Like, growing up hearing her music,
Yes.
all my life, of course, she's bigger than life in so many ways. And to have her in front of me,
Mm,
yeah, that first shoot, I was absolutely nervous. But she had this way of putting you at ease once
mm,
you were, you
mm.
know, accepted into the circle.
Yeah.
And that
Yeah.
that first shoot, at the end of the shoot, I gave her a gift.
Mm,
Um, I gave her my first book.
mm.
The first book is like 50 African American celebrities, and she's
Yes.
like flipping through the book, and she looks at the book and she's like, "Why am I not in this book?" She put me on the spot right then and there, and I had to say, like, I promise you, in the future, I will correct that. I never
Yeah.
knew that it would be like, her own book, but here we are today, and
Yes.
and she's the queen, so of course she needs her own book.
Yeah.
But through the years, we got closer and closer,
Mm,
and it's funny also because I always called her on her birthday. I always
mm.
called her on her birthday, sent her
Yeah.
a message later on, a call, something, flowers, just because that was
Mm.
that special day. So
Yeah.
only
Yeah.
fitting to be doing this now.
It's really interesting to hear you talk about Aretha in the context of meeting her and getting to know her, and in terms of her also being, by the time you met her, having reached a certain point in her trajectory, in her career, in her life, as the Queen of Soul. And why I say this, because when I first, had the first conversations with her, and we first met her the first conversation I had with her was in 1966 on the phone from London, which which was my Christmas gift to myself to speak to someone in America, which took a lot of working out, because you had to call the I called the London International Operator, the International Operator called the Detroit International Operator, and then they called the number. It's not, you just didn't pick up the phone,
Oh,
because in
wow.
1966, I mean, this is a whole different way of doing things. And
Wow.
then, that's the time for I called her to wish her a Merry Christmas. And she had never spoken to anyone in England before. And so it was a big deal for her. And she knew, I told her, this is David. I wrote, I wrote to you and you wrote back and so forth. Anyway, at that time, she was not who she became.
Yeah.
And so I witnessed, in a sense, that's funny, witnessed her
Trajectory.
emergence as, yeah, trajectory of her career to where she became who she became globally. And it's, for me, it was a different kind of relationship, because I think because it began at that point, even before she had begun having massive global hits, which was within a month or 2, 3 months of us having that first conversation. Yeah, I got to see, it's almost like watching someone grow into their greatness.
It's a great thing to see.
Yes, and so I have a different reference for her, and when I got to get to spend some time with her, I mean, it was a whole different experience for me, and it's interesting because I think from the first time I ever heard her on stage, saw her on stage, I should say, which is in 1968, I was so like, wow, as were all the rest of the British audience that that I realized this was not just an ordinary soul singer by any means, and or any just not soul singer, singer. And it's just great to be able to talk to someone who saw her at a different point in her journey, and I always felt like the kind of relationship she and I had been birthed at that time in 1966 in a way that she never forgot that I had been championing her at that time from the essentially the beginning of her commercial journey, should we say, or commercial her journey into mainstream recognition. But I will say this: when I did start to get to spend time with her, much of what you've just said is how I experienced her too. Very down to earth, very kind of easy to talk to. I mean,
Easy to
just a
talk to.
really the thing I was struck by, which sounds like the same thing for you, is the natural womanness of her. I mean, I know that's
Yes.
not really a kind of correct way of using
No, but I
it.
get that. You saying that phrase, I get that because,
Yeah,
yeah, I actually like that. The natural womanness of her, that was real. And you
yeah,
felt that.
yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And the thing that I want to say and I want to ask you about is because for you to have that kind of access to her in terms of being able to have that kind of conversational relationship and just be able to you to be around her on a more personal basis um takes for her trusting someone. So
Yes.
you obviously gained
Yes.
her trust, I guess, imagine from the beginning. So, can you say a little bit about that? Because I also understand not just with Aretha, but anyone who reaches a certain level of fame, being able to trust someone in a way that you can just have conversations, regular conversations with them, and in regards to something as intimate as having photo sessions,
Yes.
you had to have brought something to the table that had her feel that she could be that way, which trust you. And so, talk to us a little bit about that element of your relationship with her.
Of trust, it is a major part with Aretha and with all my clients who I work with. You have to build that where they feel they can trust you because even like their image, most people will never see her up close and personal. So that picture is usually as close as people ever get. So to trust somebody with that image that's going to be out there that
Mm.
people see and connect with, in order to get that, you have to have that connection. And with Aretha
Yes.
and with all my clients, I work on building that relationship from the very first moment. And I do that by trying to find out about them, not about, Aretha the star,
Mm.
the famous singer, the queen of soul, but Aretha the person.
Yeah.
And when I first met her, she reminded me of people in my family.
Wow.
It still does actually.
Yes.
And it felt so natural and comfortable.
Mm.
And she made me feel comfortable. So I could open up about my life to her.
Mm.
And I think that also helped to make us closer
Yeah.
by saying, like, yo, my father was also a minister, her father was a minister,
Yes. Yes.
all those things that church background is real.
Mm.
And it
Mm.
definitely it felt comfortable.
Mm. Well, let's talk a little bit about the actual photo shoots themselves, because one of the things that I'm aware of from many many conversations with Aretha was, she was very particular about what she wore.
Yes.
And I can just share with you briefly before you tell us about different photo shoots and how you prepare for them and how she was with them. There's only one time I felt that I crossed a line. Famous interview I did when she was living in Encino, and I said, yeah, we were all casual talkers. So it was an interview, and she knew it was an interview. So I said, can I just ask you about the kind of some of the clothes you wear, and I knew that I was stepping into a delicate area, but I thought, well, this is going well. Just asking, So yeah, I said, I don't know how I framed the question, but it was like, can you tell us how something like, can you tell us about how you decide what to wear on stage, and or something to the effect of that there are people who didn't always understand why she wore what she wore. I don't exactly remember the words I used, but I will change. I'm going to change position a little bit to tell you that that's what she did. We were sitting in a living room, and I'll now call her Miss Franklin for the purpose of this moment. Miss Franklin sat up in the chair
Uh-oh.
and she said, "I like what I wear. I design what I wear. I have my designs done by Bob Mackie and different designers, and but there was a kind of like." You really did ask that question, underneath it, and
Regardless of what people think about what she wore, whatever, she wore it with confidence. And
yeah,
that's the thing that was so cool about her. She didn't worry about what other people think about what she wore. She's like, "Oh, I like this. I'm going to wear this." And that same confidence of that moment, because a lot of people are like, "Oh, what do you think? What do you think?" Not Aretha.
mm-mm.
She tell me what she's going to wear, and it's my job to make her look good in that whatever she's going to wear, what she's going to come out with.
Yeah,
Now, what people think around, that's up to them. But
yeah,
I loved that confidence was
yes,
always there, and she showed it
yes,
no matter what she had on, and I
yeah,
love that. Seeing that
yes.
confidence in anybody, that's it's appealing. It's sexy.
All right. But so let's talk about one of the things that I'm aware of is that to prepare for the shoots, you would often play music that
Yes.
you I get tell me about why you did that and how it went. What happened? How was that? And how did
Well,
you
that
choose what to play?
that first shoot I did with her,
Yes.
I made a list of music that I thought she would like. It's like, Smokey or Motown hits. And I threw in some other stuff as well. And like the newer singers. And I could tell she wasn't really so much into that music. Or so I thought anyway. So I told myself, okay, I'm going to make sure from now on I have music that I think she's going to like. So I went through and I brought it out for you.
Yes.
I made my own Aretha Cool list, my favorite Aretha Cool music, and I put it on this iPod.
Wow.
I still have it
Yes.
today. This is the
Yes.
iPod I played that I made of all my favorite Aretha Franklin music.
Wow.
And I started playing that music on every shoot after that.
Mm.
It's all of my favorite Aretha Franklin songs.
Mm,
And to
mm,
see how she reacted to hearing her own music.
yeah.
No, most artists don't want to hear their music at all. They're tired of hearing their music.
Hmm.
She was never tired of hearing. She loved it the same way that I love it, the way the fans love it now. She loved hearing her own music,
Yeah.
and she'd go off into it the way we do, like what I do now when I hear it. Like if I'm playing it in the gym or whatever, I'm humming along or sometimes singing along, and she would too. So to see her
Mm,
have that reaction to her music
mm.
was phenomenal.
Yeah.
She's humming along to her music. She's
Yes.
getting caught up in the memory of it.
Hmm.
And very often she starts singing along to the
Wow.
songs.
Yeah. That's really great, Matthew, because one of the things that you're right, a lot of singers don't like to listen to their own voice, which I can't understand because but that's I don't know what that's about, but
Not Aretha.
there are singers who just won't listen to their own music. But
Yeah.
Aretha, yes, and you know what I think it was a source of pride for her that she loved. You see, I think part of the magic is that she loved her voice. She loved her voice and she owned it like she owned this is what
She
I do.
owned it.
And there's something about the art of her singing that isn't like anyone else. And I
like
think that
no one
probably that had a
else.
lot to do with it. That she and I would venture to suggest that even as she was listening, she heard things in the music that she had forgotten about. In other words, when you
Yeah.
record as much as she had, that obviously she can't remember every recording session, and there are probably things she
No.
went, wow, and so I get it. I totally get it. I mean, I have a slightly similar experience when I did an interview with her in Bloomfield Hills in 1985, and yeah, we were
Wow.
already comfortable with each other, and we've done lots of interviews together. And this was for the albums Who's Zooming Who, and I was there for a couple of at least an hour, 2 hours, and the whole interview wasn't 2 hours, but at some point, she said, "Would you like something to eat?" And I said, "Well, yeah, yeah, cool, yeah, 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 cool." I said, "Yes." And so as she was preparing some food, she was singing along to some music she had on, which was not her. She was singing as I remember it. This is so funny. This stays in my memory banks. There was a George Benson song. What was it now? It wasn't Give Me the Night, but Love Times Love, I think it was.
Oh
And she's walking
yeah.
around the house just singing along with it, like, hey. I'm like,
Like
okay,
anybody else. Like you hear a great song, you sing along, you hum it, it stays in
yeah,
you. And like on those shoots, she was like, humming along, singing along like everybody else, even though it's her music and her
yeah,
voice, and
yeah.
that's special. Yeah, she
Now,
loved, she loved it.
I know you mentioned to me previously that there was one song, one particular recording where, well, I'll let you tell us about it. I know what you're going to tell me because we had a little conversation about this before, but tell us about this one particular recording that was unlike maybe her response to some of the other ones.
Yeah, well, as you already know, I had my favorite music playing, and I had this iPod here playing my favorite music of Aretha Franklin, and I'm like, oh man, I'd play that music on every single shoot.
Mm.
And after a while, like you get comfortable being around a person,
Mhm.
and you feel like, oh, I can like, be myself.
Mhm.
And there's one shoot, and it's just this amazing day. It's in New York City, and I'm shooting her. Music's playing. It's in a studio, so it's like vibrating throughout the walls. It's loud, and I'm like 3 feet from. I'm like 3, 4 feet in front of her, shooting her, and she starts singing along to the song. And this is like one of my favorite songs. I'm like, oh my God, she's singing my song.
Mhm.
So in my head, I'm like humming along as I'm shooting her.
Mhm.
And then it just comes out. I start singing along with her
Really?
for like a second before she stops me. She looks at me.
Oh man. Well,
She stops at me.
what was the song?
Oh, you're
Come on
all
now.
I need to get by.
Oh, you didn't try to do the RSPECT thing, did you? No, you did.
I
I know you
didn't. I didn't
didn't.
try that part, but whatever I did, I messed up. And she was like, Jordan, baby, don't sing because you're messing up my song.
Man, that is hilarious. Yeah,
Yeah, I
wow.
mean, to hear that
Wow.
song and then have her in front of you singing that song,
Yeah.
and I'm like, oh, I didn't know I was actually singing along. It just happened, you know. I couldn't stop myself.
Well, I'm glad you
She
stopped
stopped
you when
me.
she did, Matthew, because part of that song is very complex. I mean,
Yes, it is.
I
It
mean,
is. You're
yeah,
right.
and yeah,
That part's
I
hard.
mean, that's very, and that kind of brings up for me one of the things that people don't really often address, which is the art, Aretha's art, her
Yeah.
artistry, I should say, because I mean, I've had the privilege to have listened to some of the references or of the demos before the final recording of that, from by virtue of having
Ooh.
gone to the vaults, the studio, the Atlantic vaults, and gotten reference discs of different takes of some of those songs. And I'm telling you, when you hear the how she created the song, see, some people didn't realize that Aretha, while she might not have been credited as the producer on everything, at some point she was, but really she was the creator and producer of those vocals. I mean, you can't, you know, I mean, I remember when I first heard that, you
Yeah.
know, I'm not
Yeah,
going to
that
try to
riff in the
create
beginning
it.
of that song, like,
R-E-S-P-C-T,
oh,
you know,
yes, because it goes so
that
fast, and you're like,
I know,
oh,
man,
oh.
that is her genius for
It
me.
is genius.
That's genius to be able to take a song that's already established in people's
Yes.
consciousness, doesn't sound, and the way she did it was not like anyone else, and turn it, and I would say
Into
Aretha-ize
her
it.
own. Yes.
Aretha-ize it. Yes, man.
Aretha eyes it. I
But
like that.
I really wish you know what I could the way you recreated that, how she said she called you Jordan, she still called you Jordan, right?
Yeah, all the time. Jordan, baby, don't sing.
That was being polite.
Yes. Yes.
I love
Yes. But
that.
even the moment after that, like she tells me that, and the whole room is like shocked at first. So like this silence for like a second, then
Mhm.
everybody's laughing,
Oh
including
yeah.
Aretha, you
Oh yeah.
know. So
Yeah.
I love all that. Those
Yeah.
moments of everybody laughing and her laughing, those pictures of her laughing from it, that was a great day.
Yeah. Well, there's another one that you mentioned to me about that was had a different reaction. So can
Yeah.
you talk to us a little bit about that?
Oh yeah. So this is actually another day. And again, actually, I'm not sure if this was in New York or Detroit or where we were shooting this image when this happened. We're shooting, we're in studio, and this song comes on, and everybody's quiet in the room.
Mm,
It's like, and a shoot normally is like there's a lot of energy going on, everybody's doing this stuff. But this song, Aretha was quiet, I'm quiet, my assistant, everybody in the room, the hair, makeup, bodyguards, everybody was lost in this song.
mm.
And the song ends, and I tell my assistant, play that song again. And everybody's like, yeah,
Wow.
yeah, yeah. Ain't no way.
Mm,
To hear that song with everybody being quiet around and just hearing it, taking it in, see Aretha being taking it in also,
mm,
that was special.
mm,
Never talked about that moment, but everybody was like, yeah, play that again, play that again.
mm.
Like,
Well, I think I don't know how many of the recordings that you were playing during the course of different photo shoots went that far back. I mean, were they often? I'm asking you for a reason. In other words, were most of the recordings that you were playing from a different era in her career, or were they mostly? Yeah, was it a mixture? So
it
I
was a
know it
mixture.
comes
It was a
from
mixture.
1968. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Yes, it's a mixture of different albums and
Mhm.
even up until like the later years, I mixed stuff together that I'd heard that I loved. It was like
Yeah.
my favorite Aretha Franklin songs, and it's funny because
Really?
like I wish I'd had other songs in there now that I
Yes.
didn't have in there,
Yeah.
back then. But yeah,
Well, it's all right. You got what you got. That's right.
that's
And
true.
I'm sure
That's
it was
true.
wonderful. And there was thing I was to say to you about when probably I'm reflecting and thinking, that the song had that effect on the a kind of a pensiveness, I think, where you were
Yeah.
describing it, like a thoughtfulness going back in time to the memory of that recording and what was happening in her life at the time. And I think that much of when I think about how come of all of all her contemporaries, Aretha struck a chord with so many people is because there was a realness about what she was singing about. Now she would say, and I can tell you, I can find quotes. She even said, a lot of times people think that what I'm singing about is autobiographical. And she said it sometimes was, but often it wasn't.
Yeah.
And uh, uh, and you'd have to know more about her life at the time, which at that time was quite public. I mean, it wasn't like she was a private citizen to understand why that song would have meant something very personal to her. And I think one of
Yeah.
the things I've always appreciated about her art and her music and who she has been as a human being is that there's a realness to it, that there's an honesty, and it's almost like she's saying here, this is who I am. This is who I
And
am, and this
wasn't
is what
afraid to
I'm
say
dealing
that.
with. Yeah, and you know, with no disrespect to to her peers, that was what I think singled her out from many of the people who've been around, and still some are still around, you know. Again, that when you heard her, there's a certain kind of approach to this to the music that you knew that this was really how she was feeling. This
You
is really
heard it, you
Aretha
felt it
telling
in the
you.
song. You
Exactly.
felt
And
it.
that song in particular, I mean, you know, wow. I mean, you know, given the circumstances of her life at the time, you can see why that meant something to her. And of course, it meant to something to many people because the experience of, you know, ain't no way I can love you if you won't let me. I mean, you know, that's a universal.
No, she
Yes,
sung
yes.
that song in such a way where
Yeah.
your soul feels it. You
Yeah.
don't
Well,
hear that song, you
yeah.
feel that song.
Uh, Which is what makes her the Queen of Soul
Yes.
in particular, because that's a way of being. It's not just a title. I mean, a lot of times people get swept up in the title, you know, oh, Queen of Soul. But you know, to inhabit that title, so to speak, it requires a certain kind of human being. And I have to say that I want to go back to the sessions you had with her because it sounds like she gave you access not just for the photo sessions, but as a human being to who she was
Yeah.
as a I just let me tell you, I have a hard time saying was with Aretha because for me she is still here, not in physical form, but I'm very, very present to her influence, her impact, and in a sense, her spirit. I mean, the way my living room set up right now, you can't
Same.
see, but there's a whole Aretha album display on the other side of the room from
Oh,
albums that had something
wow.
to do with doing the reissue notes and so forth, or had something to do with the producing of the reissue. So she's always in my living room, always, 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 always.
Wow.
And so that's part of why I say she's always there. But I think, and I know from people who have followed in a devoted way her music and her career, that she very much is present for them everywhere, all the time. So,
All
so,
the
so I
time.
bring that to say that your book, from people who have been really conscious of Aretha's presence, is a gift because begin to see a part of her, almost like the behind the scenes Aretha in a sense. And I think that you know, obviously everyone to get to meet her the way that you and I had the privilege to do. And I think through your book, people will get to get a sense of who she was in was outside of the image, but in terms of you know what kind of person is Aretha, and you know, and I think that's rare. That's rare. People don't get that. They don't get to see that. There are other people I could name who are not as
Open.
maybe not as I'll say real, that's not the word I want, but they're not as open to discovering who they are off stage. And I think that it sounds like what you got was to get to see the natural womanness of
The
Aretha.
natural womanness. That's
Yes,
I
man.
did.
Yes.
And connected with that because
Yeah.
it felt so familiar to me.
Yeah.
She reminded me so much of my younger sister in so many ways, in
Yes.
so many ways. Even looking through the camera, sometimes I'd see my sister, and Aretha was just real, didn't hide anything, you know, on set. I get a chance to like see her, you know, of course, and she's on performing in the
Yeah.
studio, at parties, behind the stage, all that stuff, and then talk on
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
phone, you know, and still feel that real thing. Like she's like, "Oh
Yeah.
yeah, I'm watching this show," and I'm like, "Oh yeah, I know that show," and just talking about normal stuff.
Well, yeah. See that, and that right there is the thing. See, I think that really is what distinguishes her from others because she just talk about whatever she want to talk about. Maybe I can't.
Yes.
Well, good. So Matthew, I know we could talk for hours, and we can't because otherwise it would be a very, very long interview. But just to wrap up, just tell me when you made the choice to do the book, how did you select what was going to be in it?
That was so hard. That was so hard. Um, you know, when you are so close to your images as a photographer, it's
Mm,
hard to move away from them.
mm,
So it's good to have other eyes.
mm.
So my publisher definitely helped with that. The publisher, designer, they
Yes,
saw everything, and having those virgin eyes, they could see what I could not see. Because I'm
yes.
close to, like, as photographer, you're so into everything that happened as you're shooting,
Mm,
and that sometimes, like, it muddies the situation where you can't
yeah,
tell what's great or not great.
yes.
So virgin eyes from, like, a designer, a publisher, they definitely had their input on, oh, this is going to resonate. And then I had comments from, like, some fans also
Oh,
who said,
really? Okay.
yeah,
All
because I
right.
had an exhibit where I had like maybe 12 pictures. And I remember
Yes.
this was at this is in Japan, this is in Kobe,
Hmm.
Japan.
Really?
And there was this guy who came to the exhibit, and there were studio shots up there, but there were some shots that were just like, her normal. And this guy said, out of all the pictures here, this one is my favorite. And he told me why.
Mm,
And I was so shocked to hear him telling me, this Japanese man telling me how deeply he loves Aretha Franklin's music, and why he said, this picture hits me. It resonates. And he told me why. I'm like, okay, now I get it. People have a connection to certain pictures because it reminds them of a moment that they had. Everybody has their own Aretha Cool moment, right?
absolutely. Yes. Yes.
So it's my job just to show the work and let people see the work and have their own moment.
Yes. Well, all right. Well, what was yours to complete our call? Is there a
Oh
moment?
wow.
Is there
There's
a
there's
photograph?
so
Is there just one?
I have two hanging up right now in my home,
Okay.
and both of them speak to me all the time.
Mm,
Both of them speak to me. One's in my office, one's in the living room. They One, she's looking directly at me, so it follows you around the room. You
mhm.
know, I love that picture. It was when she was sick at the time when that picture was made, so she's slimmer.
Yes.
Um, but the look on her face, I just love that picture. Nobody else feels that same way about that picture but me. But for me, that picture just, it haunts me. I love it so
Mm,
much.
mm.
And then there's another picture. I call it an ugoku graph. Ugoku is a Japanese word for movement.
Okay.
And in the book, you'll see a series of pictures where it's like a blending of movement.
Mm.
And that picture
Uh,
also
yes.
gets me.
Great. Well, thank you, Matthew. I really, really am so appreciative of having the conversation with you. You are actually the first person I've ever had a conversation with who's in Japan. So that's the
Ah,
first. Hopefully the first of many. And just really,
absolutely.
yes, thank you so much. This is really, I mean, yeah, I just feel like what you've done is capture a period of time in her life. This is really important for everyone who appreciates and loves Aretha. But beyond that, people who may not have as much reference for her will get to a sense of who she is and has been with you through the eyes of your camera. Well, actually, it's not
Yes,
through the eyes of your
indeed.
camera, through the lens of your camera. Um, and and I do get from having the experiences I had with Aretha that, as I said before, for her to growing you that kind of trust, to feel like you could take as the photographs you took of her is very special.
Thank you
So
so
clearly, it
much.
was it was something you brought something to it that to have it happen, because it's not, it's like it's the same thing for me with my writing about her. Whenever she read what I wrote, it wasn't just like, oh yeah, thank you. It was a very, and I wrote from a place, and I think you probably wrote, you did photographs from the place of respect,
Yes.
appreciation, and really, I guess, love. That's
Love,
really what there
reverence,
is to say.
respect, all of that. Because
Yeah,
she is still and always will be this icon, in many of our lives.
yes,
So
yes,
this book is available for people in America on Amazon.
yeah,
For
yeah.
those who are outside of the States, it's available at arethacool.com.
Really thank you. And just really on behalf of all of the people who love Aretha Franklin all over the world, because she
All
is
over the world.
global. She is global. In fact, the fact that I'm in London and you're in Japan is proof of the global impact of Aretha, the one and only Queen of
Yes.
Soul. Thank you.
Queen of Soul. Thank you, man. It's been a
All right.
pleasure.
You too.